Good morning, guys. Welcome to another episode of Vietnam Innovators. I'm your host, Hảo Trần, every single week. Thank you for tuning in and supporting the show. Without you, without me, without the studio, could not all be possible without our beloved audience and listeners. So thank you so much for tuning in each week and supporting the show. And of course, thank you to our guests. We have a guest here today. He's the CEO of Nestlé in Vietnam, Binu Jacob. He has been around for a couple years in Vietnam.
2 years now.
2 years now, but he's been with Nestlé for 25. So a lot of insights that we can share today. And of course, talk about what he's doing and his team in Vietnam for the many years to come of Nestlé here in Vietnam. Binu, that's enough for me. Want to hear from you. Welcome to the studio first off.
Thank you, Hal.
Binu, let's just start off. 25 years at any company is long, let alone and your entire career basically has been Nestlé. Let's talk about that. Where'd you get your start, and how'd you end up here?
When I joined Nestlé 25 years ago, I had no idea that I would be here 25 years later. Like most young people at the time, my thinking was I join, work for 5 years, get the stamp on my resume, and then I leave. But here I am 25 years later. I started my career with Nestlé in India as a trainee. I went through the whole grind of doing marketing, sales, and then I ended up in consumer insight. And that was a revelation to me of how much you could really make a difference by just understanding the consumer. So I had a solid foundation in consumer. And then I moved into brands. I handled Milo for many years, then nutrition for some time. But really the turning point in my career was when I moved to Switzerland as a global marketing manager on nutrition. And from then on, I went to the US. I spent a few years there, went back to India as the regional business head for South Asia for nutrition. Then went to China, did the same thing for about 4 years, and 2 years, last 2 years I'm here in Vietnam.
Fantastic.
As the CEO.
So you've seen the world from how consumers in the West and the Asia and emerging markets, consume products, everything from food to water to milk.
Yeah.
Lots of insights.
A lot of insights, and also it was an eye-opener because when you work in one market, sometimes you tend to believe the world is just what you see.
Yeah.
And I was kind of close-minded for many years working in India. And when I moved to the center, some of the dogmas that I believed in were completely changed. And I started seeing things from a different perspective.
Yeah, fantastic. From India to Switzerland to the US and China, super different markets. Yeah. But Vietnam, it's the most special of all. Or at least in my opinion. And you've been here for 2 years. What do you think of the market opportunity here? Yeah. What is it for Nestlé?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because maybe early 2020, my wife and I, after spending about 4 years in China, we were discussing about where next. And coincidentally, both of us came with Vietnam. And serendipitously, just 2 weeks later, I get a call from the CEO of Asia, Oceania, and Africa, asking me if I would like to move to Vietnam. And it was one of those things where I didn't have to consult my wife. And in a split second, I said yes.
Amazing.
And then a few months later, I landed here. But for me, the most interesting thing about Vietnam is there are many markets in the zone, in Asia, that are fast growing, where the opportunity is very big, where FMCG is still at its very nascent stage. And Vietnam is one of them. So in my opinion, that doesn't make Vietnam that special. But I think the one thing that does make Vietnam very special is the attitude of the people. I haven't seen many places in the world where the people, there's one characteristic I believe of the Vietnamese people that's kind of unique. It's individualistic, collectivist. People are very driven by strong individual aspirations to do well in life, to succeed in life for themselves and for their families. But at the same time, what's different is they don't want to achieve the success at the expense of somebody else. They want to achieve the success in a way that they gain reputation, they gain the respect of people around, they get the societal acceptance. So this combination of strong personal ambition combined with a strong need for societal belonging, I think is fairly unique in Vietnam.
Fantastic. Talking about you didn't have to, it was a split decision once you got the call because it was almost pre-agreed somehow. What were the reasons for that? Consensus that you had?
I'd like to say it's a very practical decision, but the reality is it was a very emotional decision. My wife and I spent our 10th wedding anniversary in Vietnam about 12 years ago. And we love the place. It's one of those places where you come in and say, you belong here. It's just the people are so warm, they're welcoming. So it was a combination of many things. You feel good when you come to that place. It's like, a lot of people who believe in Feng Shui. I don't really understand Feng Shui, but the one thing I do believe in it is when you walk into a place, you feel the energy and you feel something right about it. And Vietnam was one of those places where we both immediately walked into Vietnam and we said, yeah, this place, we love this place.
Oh, fantastic. Well, that's great to hear. Your experience has been so positive from the beginning to now. And on that note, 2 years, if we wind back the clock a little bit, that's around when the pandemic started, and you joined right at the height of it. What was that transition like? Did you have a proper handover from your predecessor? Maybe it was over Zoom or Meets or whatever you call these days. But
that's an interesting one. To some extent, I think I was lucky because I moved from China. So when I moved from China early 2020, China had already experienced the pandemic. To some extent, it kind of prepared me both mentally and also from a very logical point of view what to do. So when I walked into Vietnam, I had a 1 week handover with my predecessor, and then suddenly Vietnam went into a lockdown. But the good thing is, in that 1 week's time, we could anticipate what was coming because I'd seen what COVID had done in China just 2 months prior to that. So I had a 2-month lead. But in my opinion, when I look back, I think it's one of the best decisions I took at the time. Coming in and just leveraging off the learnings from China and just accelerating things and putting the structure in place.
You were on fire right when you went.
Absolutely. When I look back, it's there's no way we could have prevented the pandemic from impacting our business, but at least I think we prevented pandemonium inside the organization because there was a lot of confusion, chaos. People didn't know what to do.
Well, it helps. I guess the fire of baptism. That's the phrase you would use in the U.S., where your team, who's new with you, could see how you react as a leader, right? How you manage that crisis. And I guess you couldn't ask for a better onboarding as well, I guess you could say.
It may sound surprising, but to some extent I enjoy whenever there is crisis. Because I just feel when it's crisis, it brings out the best in people. You can steer the business direction the way you want, because in a crisis, people are willing to change.
Yes.
When everything is going well, I've also been in business situations where things were perfect. There was no need for change. But I always felt a little bit uncomfortable in those situations because I always believe you need to change, irrespective of whether you are in a comfortable position or not.
Right. Let's take a step back a little bit. I think thank you for that introduction and into your career and how things got started here in Vietnam. Binu, Nestlé, I think no introduction needed. It's very recognizable anywhere. We've got a number of products, including La Vie, my favorite water brand, here in Vietnam, but across the globe as well. How does a CEO at Nestlé define innovation? Hence, we're on Vietnam Innovators show, of course, when the ecosystem that you guys have built is quite structured, well known already. How does innovation work within that framework?
The way we define innovation is innovation has to satisfy 3 criteria. The first, it has to meet a strong unmet consumer need. If it's not going to meet a strong consumer need, there is no basis for innovation. The second is we need to have a strong technical superiority, something that's unique that we are bringing to the table that would be hard for competitors to copy. And the third is financial viability. You need to make money out of this, otherwise it's not innovation. So for us, it has to meet the sweet spot between these 3. If it doesn't, it's not innovation. It's just novelty that we're bringing to the market. But this framework is a general framework that I'm sure a lot of companies would have similar frameworks to define what innovation is. But I think what's unique about Nestlé is there are a couple of other things that we add to it. First is we are a food company. And for a food company, innovation has to be local. It has to make sense to the local consumer. So that's the first thing. The second thing is food, we believe, is also medicine. So to that extent, the food that we bring in should add some nutrition, health or wellness aspect to what we're introducing. And the third one is we are a very large organization, so we have a responsibility to the planet. So whatever we bring in has to make sense from a sustainability point of view. So it's 3 things. Innovation has to be local, innovation has to be good for you, and innovation has to be good for the planet.
That sounds quite intimidating in terms of the requirements you have to fulfill. I mean, intimidation in that respect can be a good thing as well, right? It gets the best out of people, as you would say. How do you make it easier, though?
You're right. Innovation is not easy, but at the same time, there's no rocket science to it. It's a combination of art and science. So you have to put some structure to it, because if you don't put any structure to it, you might end up with a lot of novel products that make no sense. So we have a very structured process in Nestlé that we call the I2L, idea to launch. So at every stage, how do you come with new ideas? There is a process that we follow. How do you then vet it? How do you consumer test it? So we have stage gates that we check at every stage to see, is it still relevant to what the idea was? At the beginning, it has to undergo these 3 tests of consumer desirability, financial viability, and technical superiority. But that might change along the path of innovation. So we check it, and then we say yes, no, and we stop innovations that don't make sense. Now, the good thing is innovation can come from anywhere. It's not that it's only going to come from the marketing department. So we allow for ideas to flow from anywhere. And ideas do come on services, on the value chain, etc. But typically product innovation is led by 2 units. It's the business unit and our local R&D. So they work together to bring innovation to life.
Let's talk about the pandemic and how you guys not only weathered that storm, but perhaps leveraged it to lead to innovation, or at least some sort of change, process perhaps change. What were some of those changes that you guys made during that time that has actually led to more efficiency, more innovation, or even an readopted mindset, rethinking what you're doing?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. In our opinion, there are many things that the pandemic has done in terms of shifting some of the trends. Now, to be fair, to some extent, the pandemic just accelerated some of the trends that were there prior to 2020. So in our view, there are 5 big changes that the pandemic brought about, which are long-term in nature. The first is how consumers view health and value for money. And this is a very important one, because in Vietnam, we saw that consumers gravitating more and more towards more natural, more fresh products during the pandemic than even before. In general, Vietnamese consumers look at freshness and naturality more than other consumers in this part of the world. So that trend accelerated significantly. The other interesting thing was value for money. How in other parts of the world, during pandemic, when income levels dropped, people started going towards cheaper products. In Vietnam, the opposite happened. People started going towards more premium products, bigger pack sizes, because for one, the Vietnamese consumers are actually smarter. They measure how much they're going to get if they buy a larger pack versus smaller pack. And in most cases, larger packs make more economical sense than smaller packs. So they migrated to large packs. At the same time, in certain categories, they were willing to pay more to get better quality. And of course, they would have made sacrifices elsewhere. They don't eat out so much, don't travel as much. So all that money they reinvested back into products that really helped them get more value during the pandemic. A good example of this is infant formula. In infant formula, we saw a dramatic increase in people buying super premium and ultra premium products. Right? So we shifted our portfolio. Our portfolio was in the premium segment, and we were quite happy and quite comfortable thinking that segment would grow. But we suddenly started seeing people going even higher. So we had to quickly bring in some products from other markets
that weren't here already.
Okay. So we launched something called Nan Infini Pro during the pandemic. It was a new product that really addressed. That was the first product with A2 milk.
Okay.
And A2 milk is, it's a longer story, but it's really more natural, the way milk is supposed to be. The other big change we saw was digitalization. And digitalization, yes, was already there. Pre-pandemic, 20% of Vietnamese consumers were using mobile wallets. But post-pandemic, that number is 70, more than tripled. So what this means is that for us, there are new opportunities to do business. And internally, we completely restructured the organization on digital. So earlier, digital was mainly digital marketing or e-commerce. Right? Now we have an end-to-end digital team. It's called the Digital Acceleration Forum, starting from sourcing, manufacturing, procuring, producing, selling, and even consumer marketing. And this forum, we meet every month, all the cross functions, and they share what they're doing on each of these. And one of the most amazing things for me, the realization that the factory people came up with the most digital solutions during the pandemic. We created like 56 apps within the factory to make factories paperless. And all this, to some extent, was driven by the pandemic, because we had to get more efficient, cut the waste. We didn't have people. During the height of the pandemic, we were running short of manpower. And so we had to automate things. We had to digitize things to get more efficient. And that stays. The benefit is now, the baseline has become the efficiency we gained last year. And now we have to improve on top of that.
It looks like the benchmark for the standard and success is higher than ever.
It's higher than ever. And I'm very happy about it.
Yeah.
Because last year we did get impacted because we didn't have manpower. We lost some potential sales because we couldn't produce enough.
Right.
But this year, thanks to that, I think we're benefiting even more.
Okay. Well, that goes to my next question, which is all companies have different ways of measuring success. In our case, as a startup, we are almost 100 people now at Vietcetera, actually, full time. And we're changing how we measure success every few months. We have short-term goals, but the long-term goal always is consistent, of course. How do you guys measure success at such a large organization across so many different functions? Is there a bigger team unifying goal that you measure success against, or is it more measurable in short quantities? How does that work? By the way, this is like a mini MBA course for me, I feel like. So thank you for sharing.
That's an interesting one, because most companies would measure success based on business results, which is purely what we call lagging measures. These are measures, if you do a lot of the right things, the results would come. By the way, there are two schools of thought on this. There are some people who believe that if you focus just on the results, everything else gets taken care of. Right? But we come from the school of belief that you need to do the right things. If you do the right things, then results come. You focus on people, results come. You focus on digital, results might come. You focus on innovation, results will come. So we actually have a balanced way of looking at success, not only at end goals, which is why we're a little bit more of a long-term company than most other FMCG companies. We think really long-term. So we have about 9 KPIs that we track. And depending on who is the person, they would have a different set of KPIs. So if you're in digital marketing team, your KPIs would be more linked to what percentage of your data acquisition is getting used. So we have broadly the same result KPIs, which is on growth, profit, market share. This is probably universal for most companies. But on top of this, we have a lot of leading KPIs. For instance, what percentage of our growth is coming from innovation? This is a leading KPI. Maybe 1 year, if it's low, you will pay the price a few years later.
I see.
We look at carbon footprint. How much greenhouse gas impact have we have on the business today? And by 2025, how much is that going to reduce by? And we have a target for each of these.
You guys are like future-proofing your KPIs in a way. Like you're doing things now so that 5, 10, 15 years later, you're already in a position to either defend your market share or grow your market share in some cases. And
which is why a company like Nestlé, you will not see us growing dramatically, but you will not see us going down also dramatically at a global scale. We always maintain a certain level of growth, and we've been doing this for the last 150 years. It's consistent because of this long-term focus. So sometimes in the short term, we might lose because we're not that short-term focused to just capture every single opportunity out there. We always keep one eye on the future.
With that in mind, and it's almost an obvious question, I feel like, but it's needed to ask. The work culture, because of that long-term mentality, are you looking to bring in new teammates that want to adopt that as well? You mentioned 25 years at Nestlé, which is basically forever, your entire professional career, basically. But here, let's take, Vietnam is not the only country having these difficulties right now, but people are job hopping a lot. 1 year here, 1 year there, and sometimes it's hard to convince the Gen Z, especially, that, hey, if you think further down the line, the next even 5 years is enough already, right? But let alone 25. But some are leaving after 1. What is the work culture to help kind of filter down your experience and all the other senior leaders at Nestlé to the new folks that are joining? Yeah.
No, this is I mentioned 5 trends that are shifting. This is the 5th one.
Yeah.
The changing expectations of employees today, especially post-pandemic, it's accelerated quite a bit. So this is a challenge that all of us are facing. It's not new for us. But the way we always measure ourselves is, attrition will stay. It will be there. You cannot avoid it. But our objective always is our attrition should be 50% of the industry. And for the last 7-8 years, we've always been maintaining this. Our attrition is always the lowest in the industry. But post-pandemic, yes, we are also experiencing more attrition than before. But I think that's where the work culture comes back. And we have a rather unique work culture, I would say, where, it's interesting. The word Nestlé comes from the founder, Henry Nestlé. And Nestlé in German, he's Swiss German. Nestlé in German actually means a nest. So to some extent, our culture is that of a nest, where we care for people. We have a very caring culture where we support each other. And I've worked for a very brief time in other companies as well, where there's a little bit of internal competition. In Nestlé, you won't find internal competition. People are willing to help and support each other and onboard each other, just like a family would. And the second thing is we encourage a place where people are free to express themselves without any fear of retribution. So we allow people to openly talk, to discuss, to challenge and question in each other. And lastly, I think the culture is such that we don't expect people to change themselves, because everybody is unique. Everyone has a say. So we encourage diversity, and we don't want everyone to become robots or change themselves to fit with the company. If they're comfortable with themselves, we are very comfortable having them.
Would you say your experience today has been consistent with what you experienced 25 years ago? And what I mean by that is, when you were a trainee, is the experience relatively the same? I mean, you have computers now, but I'm curious if that experience is consistent.
I can say that with a certain amount of confidence because I've worked in so many different Nestlé markets. Every market I go to, there are changes, but there are some things that are really consistent about Nestlé wherever you go. The same set of values. This is another interesting aspect. Many companies, when they move from one country to another, they change their values and they try to suit the values of the culture prevalent in that place. Nestlé is the opposite. We change our strategy. Many companies keep the strategy. They launch the same products, and whether they go to Cambodia, whether they go to Afghanistan, but they change the values and they try to operate differently. We are the opposite. We keep our values irrespective of where we operate, but we change our strategy. The products are different, the portfolio is different. So you will see that some of the Nescafé products here, you will not find it anywhere in the world. They're unique to Vietnam because the Vietnamese taste buds are different. Their taste is different. So that's for me an interesting story about Nestlé, how we retain the same set of values.
Well, talking about products, I mean, I'm sure people are thinking you probably have hundreds, right? If not more than that. I'd love for you to kind of show a couple while we're on that topic of localized products.
Yeah.
So Nescafé, global brand, but in Vietnam, what do you have, Binu? What do you have to share?
Yeah, we have quite a few, but I was coming back to what your question earlier about how do you define innovation and how is that a little bit different? We adapt our innovation to meet the needs of local consumers. But at the same time, we also bring in global products. So we have a perfect marriage between these two. So I can give you two examples. One is a product that is still a little bit not yet announced. We will be announcing it soon, and that's the launch of Starbucks. So you may have read that Nestlé acquired the retail business of Starbucks. The coffee shop still belongs to Starbucks.
Okay.
But everything
the retail business, right?
The retail business, what they were selling in the US, for
coffee
instance.
Beans.
They sell coffee beans, they sell instant coffee in all the stores. So that business we've taken over because we believe this is a perfect marriage between a brand that many consumers love, especially in many parts of the world. But at the same time, we have the technical knowledge of processing coffee, buying coffee at scale, leveraging the technology we have, and the know-how of how to get it in retail. So it's been on for about 3.5 years with remarkable results in many parts of the world. So we're very, very pleased to bring that to Vietnam. So in Vietnam, I think Starbucks has an amazingly strong reputation, especially with the younger population and the premium consumers. So we want to leverage that and bring Starbucks into retail. So we will be launching this very, very soon in the market.
Okay.
This Starbucks barista range of coffees.
Okay, so for those of you listening on the podcast version of today's show, we've got a caramel latte and a cafe mocha.
And we have more. I just brought
of course, just a few here today. Very cool. But yeah, that's a big change for you guys.
Yeah.
Or addition.
So people who love Nescafe, Starbucks, and they go to a coffee shop and they want to have the same experience at home, we have the solution.
Okay. I want to take a bit of a step back and talk about a couple other things at Nestlé. One of which, talking about work culture, what's it like working at Nestlé, how to measure success. I understand you guys have quite the emphasis on the trainee program. You went through it yourself, and there's something called Spark Your Way. That's a global initiative?
No, it's a local initiative.
Local initiative, okay. And what was the synthesis behind this whole local initiative? Why are you doing it?
Okay, so this is where I said we always try to understand the local needs, and then we try to marry it with our global propositions. So the Spark Your Way came about 2.5 years ago, talking to our own employees. You mentioned that some of the young Gen Z, etc., their expectations are a bit different from what many of the millennials expressed themselves many years ago. So we try to understand these young employees and their needs. And one of the things we learned is that when they join a company, they want to have the freedom and the ability to drive change and to make change. At the same time, they don't want to change themselves for the company. So this is how we came, and this is kind of consistent with our own belief as well. Right? It's just that we didn't find a way to express this into a proposition that people would say, hey, I get it. So we toyed with quite a few thoughts. One of the thoughts was, at Nestlé, you can be you. You don't need to change yourself. But we said, let's go beyond that. Because what they're expecting is not just that they don't want to change themselves, but they want to change the company. So at Nestlé, you can spark your way. You can change the organization. You have a say, even if you're a young person, to make some difference to this company. So that's how the whole concept of Spark Your Way came about. But it's not just spark your way, but spark your way for what? And for us, it is spark your way to be a force for good. And that's why you come into the company, you can make a difference, to be a force for good. Because force for good is our universal proposition, that you can be a force for good. And in Vietnam, we kind of tweaked it to say, spark your way to be a force for good.
How many trainees are going through the program today?
We have about 20 trainees right now who just actually joined yesterday.
Okay.
The new batch. But every year we have about 20 trainees who come in. And these are the management trainees. But apart from that, we also hire sales trainees. So I joined as a trainee myself 25 years ago. And the reason why Nestlé, we still believe in this traineeship program is that
it's been successful.
It's been successful. And a lot of the CEOs and the management teams world over, there is a significant proportion of them who came through the management trainee program. So that's one reason. The second reason is, I mentioned we have a fairly unique culture. Not everybody can fit into this culture unless you come in early. If you come in as a mid-hire career after spending 10, 15 years in another company, you might find this a little bit different from what other companies are, because we are not a company that is heavily focused on just bringing results. We're really focused on how you bring those results, the leadership qualities that you bring, how you motivate your team, how you inspire your team, how you develop your team. These are things that we look for more than just, are you delivering results, yes or no?
Excellent. We touched on quite a bit, Binu, everything from how you guys think about innovation, from your career at Nestlé, what trainees can expect in their career, and measuring success and many other things. What's in the pipeline aside from Starbucks that you're excited about this year?
Yeah, of course, for me, innovation is my passion. And I strongly believe, when I look back and I came here and said, what made Nestlé Vietnam so successful? It's actually one of our most successful markets in terms of growth. And when I look back and really try to decode it, my aha was that this is one market that focused heavily on very strong consumer-centric innovation, where we have a high ability to win. And we focused only on a few. We didn't do too many things. So that focus, that razor-sharp focus on innovation, is what made us successful. So my ambition in the next few years is to bring that momentum back. How can you focus on a few things that make a difference to the lives of consumers, where we have strong ability to win and we have a financial viability, and then invest in those to make this flywheel growth momentum happen. So that's clearly something that keeps me awake at night. It excites me because I spent many years in innovation.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something that is in the pipeline. Many more new products. This is only one. There's a There's another one which we're getting into plant-based, leading the trend. Plant-based is still very small. And the percentage of vegans in Vietnam is 1.3%. It's very small. But the big opportunity we see is almost 45% of Vietnamese are conscious flexitarians, which means consciously they choose sometimes to have vegetarian, sometimes to have meat. And this conscious decision offers a lot of opportunities for us. So we are looking at how to bring in more plant-based food products in. And we're just going to launch a plant-based oyster sauce, unheard of in the market.
Yeah, I've got it right here, actually. I'll quickly show it here. Okay. Yeah, plant-based oyster.
Plant-based oyster, actually it comes from mushroom. But you get the same taste and the same aroma of an oyster sauce.
Is this only present in Vietnam at the moment?
It's an innovation by Vietnam for Vietnam. In fact, when we launched oyster sauce about 12 years ago, in Vietnam, nobody knew what oyster sauce was. Right? But it came from the insight that Vietnamese wanted to make restaurant quality dishes at home and they didn't know how. And the best way to do that is oyster sauce because it adds glossiness to the food. So we brought that in as an innovation, and now we are innovating again, taking it to the next level.
You're making me hungry, Binu. Hungry for, I don't know, innovation or for food? I'm not sure anymore. But
you'll have to wait till lunch.
Exactly. There we go. Well, Binu, it's been a pleasure to have you at the studio and talk about all things innovation across not just products, but how you lead the team and think about the future. It's been a real pleasure. And of course, my signature end questions are you hiring it? Obviously, you guys are with the Spark Your Way program, but across other functions too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. How big is the team now at Nestlé Vietnam?
We have about 2,800 people.
2,800. Well, for those of you looking for something new, you can be 2,801. You can join Binu's team here in Ho Chi Minh City, but across the nation as well. Yeah. Binu, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure, Haf. Thank you for having me here.
Yes. And thank you to all of our audience listening or watching today's podcast. Without you, the show would not be possible. So please keep tuning in, subscribe, follow, like the video, like the podcast, share it to all your friends. And of course, if you see me on the streets of Ho Chi Minh City, please say hi. Until next time, thank you guys. Thank you, Binu.
Thank you.
Take care.